Welcome to Above Par. I'm your host, Kathy Hartwood. I show you how to take more of your talent to the golf course without practicing harder, taking more lessons, or buying new equipment. I show you how to end the frustration of underperforming so you can start playing to your potential. This is where you are going to learn how to think above par so you can play below par. Let's get to it. Hello, my golf friend. Welcome back to Think Above Par. Hope you're having a beautiful week. This is actually Masters week, which is my favorite week of the year, but it's Wednesday when this gets dropped. And last week there was the Augusta National Women's Amateur Championship. And I wanted to talk about that and some takeaways from the first Colombian champion, Maria Jose Marin. So I listened to a couple of her interviews, and I was really struck by a lot of what I talk about in this podcast that she shared in those interviews. And I wanted to highlight them for you so that you can utilize them to your advantage. You can see what some of the top elite players are doing relative to managing their mind on the golf course. And it looks like a girl who shot 14 under par and had an amazing round or tournament. But there's a lot going on behind the scenes. There's a lot going on underneath her hood, so to speak, that you don't see on TV until she starts having these conversations and gets asked questions. So these are some of the takeaways that I had that I wanted to share with you so that you can start utilizing them in your mental golf preparation and how you guide yourself around the golf course. Okay, so one of the first things that she talked about was how her emotions were like a roller coaster, meaning they were up and down the whole round. She was very aware of that. She was not making it a problem because she clearly was able to manage them and guide her emotions throughout the round and still win. She talked about how she was nervous. Being nervous is not a problem. She talked about how she was really nervous in the first couple of Augusta Women's Amateur Championships that she played in, and she learned a lot from that, and she was able to manage herself a little bit better this time around. So she recognized her emotions, she called them out, and she reminded herself to stay patient because anything can happen out here. She was consistently pivoting from an emotion that wasn't going to serve her back to being calm. Some of the things that her caddy said to her was breathe, calm down, nothing happened, keep your head up. And she said that really helped her keep her mind on her goal. So luckily she had a caddy, but you get to be your own caddy when you don't actually have a caddy. He said phrases, caddy phrases to her to remind her to stay calm in those moments where her brain was starting to get a little ahead of herself. So the two things I want you to take away from that: one, that it's not a problem for your emotions to be a roller coaster when you're out there playing golf. The preferred place to play is calm. He told her to calm down, calm or certain or confident. And he did that by using some of the power phrases or caddy phrases that I share with you, but he used ones that were very impactful for her. And she gives a lot of credit to her caddy in those moments. The second thing that she did was she was really self-aware about her state and how she was feeling, but also her momentum. And she had an opportunity on the 13th hole to go for the green in two when her plan was to lay up. But she recognized that she had momentum and she was hitting it pretty solidly. So she decided that she was going to go for the green in two, and that obviously paid off. It's important for you to recognize how you're hitting it. By the time you get to 13, you pretty much have an idea if you're having a good ball striking day or not so good ball striking day. If part of your plan needs to get shifted because maybe you haven't hit, a long club in the air right, all day, now is not the time to fly a body of water or try and land at a long distance to pull that club out. And you might want to shift plans conservatively. In this instance, she was feeling really good about the way that she was hitting it and where she stood in the tournament, and she shifted her plan. And that was a pivotal moment. But that comes from a lot of self-awareness and recognizing whether her momentum was moving in the right direction or not in the right direction, and being flexible in those moments with your golf game. Okay, the third thing that she did, which I do talk about as far as us keeping score on our phones when you're constantly looking at the leaderboard. Now, Masters, we know what the leaderboards look like out there. And she said she looked at the leaderboard around 15, I think it was, and she wishes that she hadn't because it shifted her state. It really jacked up her adrenaline, and I guess she flew the green shortly after that. I rarely see an upside to looking at the leaderboard, and it's one of those things that I'm not really sure what we're looking for when we see that information. It's either going to serve us or not serve us, but there's a risk that we take on how it's going to affect our thoughts, right? So we're going to see where we stand or where other people stand, and then we're going to have thoughts about that. And those thoughts are going to create some of our emotions. And she got a lot of adrenaline from what she saw, and she wishes she hadn't looked at the leaderboard. So I do want you to consider when you're keeping your score on the phones, whether it's worth you peeking ahead and looking at what the leaderboard is before you get into 18. Is that going to change your plan? Because ultimately the plan is always going to stay the same. It's to hit as many shots from calm, certain, and confident as you can, get to 18 and slap your score up on the board and see how you stand. So if it's going to help you or motivate you or get your head out of your butt, then maybe, but I just want you to be cautious about that one. She regretted that. The other thing that she said in her acceptance speech is she thanked her coaches and talked about sticking to her process. And I talk a lot about having a process playing the game of golf. A lot of things that I show you are processes. So in other words, we can't predict our results. We can't predict for sure what other people did or do out on the golf course. She got some good breaks. Another girl got some not so great breaks, and that definitely affected the results. We can't control those things, but she kept consistently sticking to her process out on the golf course, and she gave a lot of credit to that and to her coaches who helped her do that. So as you move forward into this season and playing more golf, I really am encouraging all the people inside of my community and definitely inside of the competitive edge group is that we are focusing on our expectations of our processes and creating as many of those as we can that serve us out on the golf course. And she had that, she knew the value of that, and she stuck to her process, and that she gives that a lot of credit as well. Another thing that she talked about when she had played in this event before, because it means a lot to her, is that she got desperate and tried to force things to happen. And she recognized that you can't force things to happen on the golf course. You can't force results. You can't force yourself to make birdies. Desperation is not a great emotion to play golf from. And so she was really able to tap into that memory, knowing that that did not work. This would be something that I would tell you as a post-round evaluation where you write down what worked and what didn't work. She knew that that didn't work, and she was able to pivot and stay really present and stay really patient. And this is one of the things that I want you to know is when players talk about their rounds, especially when they're getting interviewed after a win or a great round of golf, they're rarely talking about hitting it perfectly. They're talking about how they managed themselves around the golf course, how they were thinking, things that they were experiencing, things that they're proud of, right? So when you listen to champions talk, they're not talking about perfect swings. They're talking about how they handled themselves when things started to slip, right? She didn't avoid mistakes. She had lots of mistakes. She avoided spirals. She avoided her emotions getting the best of her or taking her over. She constantly was working herself back to being calm and patient. She had power thoughts to tap into. She had a caddy who helped her with her power thoughts. She was really self-aware and noticed how she was mid-round and adjusted relative to her momentum and her adrenaline. She validated and recognized her emotions. She didn't make them a big thing. She didn't panic. She just kept pivoting back to a place where she could swing freely, think clearly, and stick to her plan. And she tapped into tools that she found useful: breathing, her routine, listening to her caddy input, some positive mantras that she says to herself, reassuring words, positive self-talk. These are all things that you can use when you're on the golf course so that you can tap into your talent and create better results for yourself. She wasn't talking about, I have to shoot a number, I have to make a birdie, I have to make a par. She was talking about her process and her routine and her emotional management. And I hope if you get an opportunity to listen to her interview, it's really interesting. I congratulate her. And I know she's super proud to be the first Colombian representing and inspiring younger players in her country and in Latin America to pursue the game of golf. So I wanted to highlight the women's tournament that precedes the Masters, as we're going to talk about the Masters all this week and give you some takeaways that you can use out on the golf course. All right, my friends, and this is some of the work that we talk about inside Your Mental Caddy. I'd love to see you inside there at yourmentalcaddy.com. All right, my friends, have a beautiful Masters week, and I'll talk to you next Wednesday. Bye.